Hello everyone and welcome to a brand new episode of Sports Insight with your host Alamdar Khan. And yes, as you know, the Sports Insight is all about sports from all across the globe, and you guys can surely reach us on our social media handles on Twitter and on Instagram, which is at the rate of Indus News Sports. And that would easily make us more interactive and we can discuss more sports and anything that you want to talk about. But anyways, we'll go to the headlines first. Yes, Pakistan versus South Africa, the first T-20 underway in Qaddafi Stadium in Lahore. Yes, Everton actually managed to win against this interesting match, Tottenham. Yes, 9 goals, we'll talk about that. Yes, an emotional journey of Sophia Kenin actually being crushed in the Australian Open. We'll surely talk about that. Yes, Toronto Raptors versus Washington Wizards. The Raptor cruise to victory. We'll surely talk about that. And yes, from the world of rugby, Marco Vunipola actually said that he's good to go against the upcoming match against Italy. We'll talk about that. All right, so those were the headlines. Yes, and the interesting thing right now is Pakistan versus South Africa, the first T20 that is going to start. And, literally, it's nail-biting. It's nail-biting for all of us for the fact that, Pakistan did manage to score their 2-0 victory but on the test side. But it's going to be T20. It's in Qaddafi Stadium. So it's going to be interesting. So to discuss this, we have Zahir Adams joining us all the way from South Africa, Cape Town. How are you, Zahir? I hope all is well with you.
I'm very well, thank you. And you?
Yeah, pretty much okay. So we thought that we'll get the analysis from your end with regards to we'll come over to the T20, but we'll start off with the first things first. South Africans visit to Pakistan and the situation that they are into. Even though we were expecting a lot of struggle with regards to their victorious side, but Pakistanis managed to break their ice of having them here and winning both the tests. How do you see that impacting? What really went wrong with regards to the Proteas? Because they were up and ready, because they were eventually here after winning matches against Sri Lanka as well. So how do you see this turning up for South Africa?
I think the test series, what went wrong for South Africa was the batting collapses. The bowlers performed splendidly. Anrik Nortje, he was fantastic with the seam bowling. George Linder, the new young spinner, he was great. But unfortunately, the batsmen never came to the party until the fourth innings with Adrian Markram and his 100 in the final test. Temba Bavuma, he showed glimpses of his form, but unfortunately, South Africa could not put together a total that really put Pakistan under pressure at any time. That's in complete contrast to Pakistan, who had, who really played the conditions well. They understood what they needed to do, and they put on big totals. And that put South Africa under pressure throughout. And if you're not going to score big runs, particularly in Test cricket and especially in that first innings, you're always going to be behind the 8 ball, and you're always going to play catch-up cricket, and that's exactly where South Africa found themselves every time.
Right. It was also informed and told that it was de Kock's last test as a captain. Did that have an impact? Because we saw him even at the last innings, he could not come up to the point where he wanted to, as in his last match of this test captaincy. How do you see the impact in the long run for not only himself but for the team itself?
I think in terms of South African cricket, it was probably a huge mistake to give him the test captaincy. He was already the one-day captain. He's already the T20 captain. Right. And for somebody that played his cricket the way he does, he's a very adventurous, he's a very free-spirited guy. Right. He doesn't like to be, he doesn't like shackles being placed on him. And unfortunately, with captaincy, that responsibility is expected of you. It is, you're required to behave in a certain way. You're required to play in a certain way. Right. And that goes all against his natural instincts. Right. It was quite confusing considering South Africa had at least the director of cricket in South Africa, Graham Smith, and the coach, Mark Boucher, had said towards the end of last year that he wasn't going to be considered for the captaincy. And then they made a U-turn. And that, I think, really placed too much pressure on him. If it was going to be a stand-in job, I think Dean Elgar was perfectly suited. He's one of the most experienced players besides Faf du Plessis, and he would have done done an adequate job. And the thing is, he actually wants it. Where I think Quinton doesn't really want it. He's just helping. He's just helping the side out now, and it's severely impacting on his performance. So the quicker it gets taken away from him and he's allowed to just play his game again and focus on himself, that's going to be a big boost for South African cricket.
Right. If you remember when the Proteas actually announced their T20 squad, it's definitely different. Clayson is actually heading them. And they did this because of the fact that they had to go to Australia. And they have to go back, they had to quarantine, they had to prepare themselves for their upcoming test, which unfortunately got cancelled as well. What do you say about that?
I think we still chatted about it the last time I was on the show. You asked me about why South Africa is sending that side, and we spoke about them needing to quarantine before Australia. And Cricket South Africa did everything possible to get Australia, to South Africa to complete that test series. And at the very last minute, Cricket Australia has pulled the rug out under them, and that's very, very disappointing for South African cricket. Whether it's the board, whether it's the fans, whether the players, everybody's I think that to a point where they're actually upset with Cricket Australia because the Australian players would basically have been given VIP access in South Africa. I think US Pakistanis, you understand how hard it is to get teams to come to your country, and South Africa is always, and now suddenly South Africa's in that situation where they're turning over every single leaf and branch to get the teams here. They were given separate hotels. They were going to be given basically VIP treatment at the airport. They wouldn't have gone through customs. All sorts of things. Cricket South Africa had gone to such a huge expense to get them here, and yet they still decided not to come. So that's very, very disappointing. And I think globally, and we're speaking to Pakistan because they know what it means when teams don't come to your home country. What it means for the people watching at home, the youngsters, not being able to see their heroes on their own grounds, and what an impact it leaves on the game. So definitely something that Cricket South Africa and South Africans in general were not happy about.
So can't there be any specific intervention from any organization or international cricket perspective that they could actually devise a law with regards to this? Because the point is, this COVID situation, the quarantine situation, like the South Africans came to Pakistan, they did have to go through the testing and everything, but their quarantining status wasn't as long as it was, it usually is. When we went to New Zealand, we had a long, tough journey, but even when and I'm sure they would have come up to you, things would have been different. So don't you think there should be a law devised by now as a whole cricket association that could actually implement that for the future so that we can avoid such collapses?
I think it's difficult for a cricket body to put those rules in place because at the moment, you rule by the national governments, and each country's got different laws relating to COVID quarantines and and quarantine restrictions and all those type of things. For example, and I can understand why New Zealand wouldn't want, why they wouldn't want, if you came there, why you'd have to quarantine for that long, because they basically back to normal. They've got people in the stadiums, similar to Australia. So it is a very delicate situation. So but the thing is that Cricket South Africa, they were willing to, all the staff at the hotel were going to quarantine for 3 weeks prior to Australia arriving, and that's a week longer than normal. The team was going to come home in quarantine. So everything Australia had actually asked for, South Africa had obliged to. So that's the reason. And if had they said maybe like a month ago, you know what, we're not coming, it's because the numbers are going up in your country, then it would have been understood. But to do it at this late stage, I think that's where Cricket South Africa, are grieved. And also, so Cricket South Africa have lodged an appeal to the ICC, to have a look at these things, because the matches were meant to be part of the World Test Championship, which the ICC governs. So that is something which falls under their jurisdiction. It's not just a normal bilateral series. So the ICC do have some sort of a say. They obviously can't force Australia to come to South Africa, but they can at least be, compensation of costs and those type of things can be discussed, because Cricket South Africa have spent a lot of money to try and get Australia, and now the tour is not going to happen.
Right, right. So, okay, let's talk about the T20 side for a bit. So, how do you see the T20, obviously led by Clayson, how do you see it going to be a blazing match between Pakistan and South Africa?
I think from a South African point of view, it's going to be quite exciting. It's going to be interesting to see these young players. Klaasen has stressed this week that they're not a B team, so to say. They're actually just a bunch of young guys, eager to represent their country and make their mark, particularly with the World T20 coming up at the end of the year, hopefully, in India. So there's guys like Ryan Rickelton, Jock Snyman, these are Nandre Berger. These are names that possibly haven't been heard outside of South African cricket, right, but who are young men eager to leave their mark. I know Ryan Rickelton, he's a wicketkeeper, opening batsman in the very same mold, like Quinton de Kock. He hits the ball hard. So it would be great for the world to see, that South Africa does have talent below the national side. Nandre Berger, a big left-arm seamer that bowls at 140 k's plus. Right. That's exciting to watch. So hopefully they do get an opportunity and they can show what they're worth here in Pakistan.
Right. So the basic clash that's actually going to happen, because there's a lot of new additions to our T20 squad as well. Not to forget that we have some interesting spinners who are actually looking forward. Like I was just going through Abdul Qadir's son Usman Qadir, who's one of the brilliant spinners that he has, and he's like up and running, and he's like, I want to take the wicket of David Miller no matter what.
I actually know Usman Qadir very well. He played at my local club down in Cape Town.
Nice.
At Primrose Cricket Club. Yeah, and my father's actually the groundsman over there, so he prepared some nice turning wickets for Usman while he was in Cape Town. So, so we Cape Townians know Usman very well. He comes down often. We were quite sad when he left for Australia initially. And we thought he was going to be the next Imran Tahir. They were looking around for a wife for him to get South African citizenship, but that never materialized, and he's gone back home.
Right. So the interesting thing is that, in the past 3 matches, he's like taken 8 wickets. He has an average of 7.5 and an economy of 5.45. So it would surely be an interesting journey to see Pakistan versus South Africa clash. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a quick break. And once I'm from the break, we'll continue talking about the whole series. See you guys after the break. And yes, welcome back, and we're talking about Pakistan versus South Africa, the T20 series that's underway. But not to forget that we still have Zahir Adams with us all the way from South Africa. So Zahir, as we discussed, and we were discussing earlier as well, it's going to be interesting to see the clash. How do you rate? Obviously, the pitch is going to be comparatively different, not only for us, but definitely for you. An edge for Pakistan, as it's their home ground. How do you see the young boys? Because when there's a new team, and new lot who have actually performed super well in their country, and they have given an opportunity. So that creates an opportunity not only for themselves, but for the team as a whole. So how do you see the new version, the new star version of South Africa going to interact with Pakistani new version as well?
I think it's going to be a nicely even series again. I think we saw, I think it was about 2 years ago now, or just before lockdown, a young South African side went to India, and they shared a T20 series in India. So if they can manage that, that's a fantastic achievement, to go to India and share a series. So to come to Pakistan, they will wanting to do something similar. I've said before, I've named the young guys that are eager, on both sides, who will be leaving their mark. So I think it's going to be an exciting series. I think it's going to be, a series where we will see some names come to the fore who we probably haven't ever heard before, on both sides. And it's really going to be exciting cricket. I think T20 cricket also brings the teams closer together. So that South African side who might have been struggling in the test, a lot of them have gone home. These are new, fresh faces eager to leave their mark. So definitely an exciting series coming up. And it's also played in 1 week. So, there's not much time if you lose a game to think about it and, where you've done wrong. You've just got to get up and go again. And sometimes for young cricketers, that's a good thing. They don't overthink. They just go in there and they have a go again tomorrow.
Right. So Obviously, let's talk more about the new squad that you're talking about, the new young team that we, as you said, that the world has not heard about them as yet, and it's an opportunity for them to perform. Who do you think will be the standout people in South African side, on the bowling side and on the batting side?
I think it's going to be. I think Luther Supamla. He'll continue learning. He'll find out what what T20 cricket is about. He's a young seam bowler. He played against Sri Lanka. He played against England. He had a tough time against England, but I think he'll go okay. But I'd like to see a guy called Glenton Steerman. He's from the Eastern Cape down here in South Africa. He reminds us of Werner Verlander, the former Proteas test bowler. He gets he's not too quick, but he does get a little bit of nibble. He bowls nice little away swingers, in swingers. He's got a lot of skills. He's got off cutters, slower balls, and he's also got a Yorker. So I'd like to see with a ball. I'd like to see how Glenton Steerman goes. Definitely somebody to keep an eye on. And then with the bat, the captain, Hendrik Klaassen, he's come back from. He's actually just had COVID and really been struggling in terms of his health, and so he's going to be keen to make a big impression. And then, as I mentioned before, we got to see Ryan Rickelton. He's cut in the same mold as Quinton de Kock. He's a hard-hitting left-handed opening batsman and a wicketkeeper. So I think he'd like to leave his mark on the series.
Interesting. So, and if I'm not wrong here, Tabraiz Shamsi will still be on the squad against Pakistan, right?
No, 100%. Tabraiz Shamsi, he's the senior spin bowler now. He's taken over from Imran Tahir. It's a pity that Imran Tahir is not in the squad. He would have loved to play in front in his home country. He's never actually played international cricket in his home country, so it's a pity that he's not around. But Shamsi has taken over, and he will have to lead the attack in terms of the spin bowlers. He'll need to take a lot of responsibility and hopefully tie down those Pakistani batsmen.
Right, and even if we look back into on the bowling side of our newcomers, let's talk about how Pakistani new bowlers have actually managed to prove their worth. Like Hassan Ali was literally phenomenal when it came to the Test series.
Hassan Ali is a fantastic bowler. He showed in the Test series. I think it was now three years ago, or a little bit more, when he burst onto the scene in the Champions Trophy. It was actually a game against South Africa at Edgbaston where he just literally exploded out of nowhere, and he went on to bowl Pakistan to that Champions Trophy. It was a real pity that he wasn't in top form, at the World Cup, and he struggled with a bit of injuries and all of that since. So he is eager to come back. A fantastic 10-wicket haul in the last Test match. We just love his celebrations, don't we? That big explosive jump that he has, and so we're really keen to see how he goes and the impact that he makes in the series.
The most interesting thing about South Africa and Pakistan is, how I've always seen both of the teams is the level of their unpredictability. Sometimes you see one of the most craziest of matches out there, and even for both of them, when it comes to Pakistan itself, when it comes to South Africa itself. So is it going to be that unpredictable matches this time? Because it's going to be when it comes to Lahore, we do have like a bigger stadium, but obviously we shorten them down because of trying to have a quicker match, a quicker outrun. How do you see the unpredictability side of both the teams? Because they both have new people on board now.
I think that's exactly what I was saying. That makes for exciting cricket. You've got young players who are not burdened by the past. They're eager to leave their mark. They're not fearful. They don't play with pressure. They just go out there and express themselves. And I think that's both sides. That's what both sides are going to approach it like that. They're both going to want to play an attacking brand of T20 cricket, and hopefully the conditions allow them to. Hopefully the wickets, it's good and it's conducive to free-flowing stroke play. So I do think exactly what you're saying, that both teams you never know quite what you're going to get, which team's going to turn up. They're both prone to some batting collapses sometimes, and and that's what makes this game so interesting and so exciting, that you don't even know what's actually going to happen, and I think that's definitely a reason to tune in just for that.
Right. We'll quickly jump over to a quick analysis of West Indies versus Bangladesh, the first test. How West Indies actually managed to get that. Not to forget, that Kylie Myers actually managed to score a double century, and literally it kind of shook everybody because nobody was really expecting West Indies to take that first match out of the hands of Bangladesh.
Yeah, so I mean, we know that what it means for West Indies cricket. The world wants West Indies cricket to do well. They've always, they've shown glimpses of their talent. They went to England last year in the middle of lockdown, and they won that first test, at the Rose Bowl, and that showed the ability that side has. But unfortunately, they never went on to win the series. England came back, and you talk about unpredictability. That side, you never know which West Indies team is gonna show up. And on the day, a debutant playing in his first test, nobody's ever heard of him. I actually read an interesting article on Karl Mayers that he was in a hurricane, involved in a hurricane not too long ago, and wow. All his possessions were in a flood, and wow. and the roof actually blew off. So I think that kind of makes somebody stronger, and it makes you more determined, to go out there when you're on the cricket field to do well, because that's not the be all and end all. There's a real life out there, and you play without pressure, and you play with a lot of freedom. And I think that's what he did on that last day. It's not easy chasing over 300, and on the final day, and he never flinched. He didn't at one point did he show any nerves or anything, and he went there and he performed magnificently. And that's what we'd like to see from West Indies a lot more and more consistently, where they actually challenge the bigger sides on a regular basis as well.
Right. But that was one interesting side. That's a very interesting take on the story of how he's actually been through that hurricane and the situation. It's all about, at the end of the day, about nerves and how calm you can get. And not to forget, let's talk a quick word about India versus England. How England actually have managed to dominate the Indian side. How do you see the impact on Indian soil? Because it was all in India, and obviously England is literally on the top of their game.
No, I think Joe Root is just phenomenal. I think if you got to find a way to get him out, then maybe you can dismiss England, because the way he's scoring double centuries at the moment for free, it's just unbelievable. Right. He's in the form of his life. The England captain just batting beautifully, and he's just dragging his team along with him. They've won in Sri Lanka, and now they've come to India, a place where, as we know, not many teams come and win test matches, and that's exactly what England have done. It's allowed the spinners, the comfort and basically just the cushion of bowling to runs, and that's what any spinner wants. So Tom Best and Jack Leach and these guys, they're just enjoying themselves because the batsmen are putting on the runs, and it's primarily Joe Root. England also have this evergreen fast bowler in Jimmy Anderson, who just keeps on going. He's 38 years old, but he just revs up the engine and off he goes again. So I think India are under pressure. They've just played a massive series in Australia. It was emotionally draining. It was challenging. It was every aspect of their their character, not just their technique, was put under the microscope. And to go from such a big series and the high of winning a series as big as that in Australia to coming back home and then having to play another one, that takes its toll.
That surely needs a lot of courage. Needs a lot of courage to be there and be dominating. Thank you very much for being a part of the show and putting in your analysis with regards to the world of cricket. And surely we'll be updating you more about the world of cricket. And now let's switch over to the FA Cup side. Yes, on the football side, Everton actually manages to win against the Tottenham. Not to forget that the match had 9 goals. And those 9 goals have been literally phenomenal. I just saw the highlights and I was like, wow, I literally had to continue watching this entire match, having 9 goals. And the struggle was absolutely real. And initially, Tottenham scored the first goal, but eventually Everton managed to score 2 goals, and the third goal came off a penalty. But interestingly, the match actually was Everton for the victory. Anyways, with regards to the FA Cup, Tottenham is actually going down the charts, so it's going to be very interesting to see and depict what's going to happen next for them. So this was from the world of football. I'll quickly jump over to the world of Australian Open. Yes, it's a very interesting situation in Australia with regards to Sophia Kenin lost her second match, which really made her upset, and she lost her match against the Estonian, and she was really upset against Kanipi, and the whole part was that she literally while playing actually had to collapse a few times, and she literally lost her nerves and not being able to prove herself, and she definitely blames some part of it to the situation of the COVID-19 situation. We'll surely be showing you a bit of her press conference, so you actually have an idea that she has actually been in tears. So here's the press conference.
I obviously felt like I couldn't find my rhythm. I was obviously way too nervous. But yeah, I mean, she played really well. She, came up with some good shots.
And yes, that was an emotional press conference by Sofia Kenin, and she's definitely upset with regards to what happened to her. Not to forget the world number one, Ashley Barty, actually made it through, and she's definitely on the same journey. But yes, Sofia Kenin needs to make a comeback before she comes to this point of no return. So that was from the world of tennis. I'll quickly jump over to the world of NBA. Yes, we talk about NBA's Toronto Raptors versus Washington Wizards. And the whole situation, the Raptors actually cruised to a victory behind a 28-point game. Not to forget that this was also an interesting take of 137 to 115. Not to forget that Norman Powell actually dominated the first 28 points in 31 minutes. So the point is, the world of basketball is actually pacing up itself as well, and there's quite to learn. Anyways, we'll switch over instantaneously to the world of rugby. Yes, with regards to the world of rugby, England, obviously the defending champion. Not to forget that Mako Vunipola, yes, he has been injured for a while, and they actually lost this last game 11-6 against Scotland. So this 30-year-old had been missing for a while, specifically losing that match. And not to forget that England is the defending champion. But currently, he said that he's up and ready. He's recovering from his injury. But anyways, we wish him the very best for the upcoming match. Anyways, this was all the major updates from the sports world. You guys can definitely reach out to us social media handles, which is at the rate of Indus News Sports on Twitter and on Instagram. Till then, take good care of yourself, and bye-bye.